Hi, my name is Anita Chan. I'm the Program Coordinator at Arthritis Consumer Experts. I'm very honored today at the office to speak to Otto Kamensek. He's a resident artist at the Port Moody Arts Center, and he's currently having an exhibit there called Shorts Bone Deep, and that's going on from April 17th to May 8th. And he is also a person living with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. So, Otto, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how this all started for you?
I guess you're talking about the arthritis aspect?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was diagnosed when I was about 9 years old. I think I had it probably a year prior to that, but it was undiagnosed. And it came on quite severely. I had involvement in my toes and ankle, hands, wrists, neck, and knees. And I was hospitalized for a few months, or a month I believe. So it started then, and I've been living with it now for about 40 years. So a fairly long time, probably more, longer than I can remember the non-pain days kind of thing.
And have you always been interested in ceramic arts for this long as well?
No, actually not. In fact, when I was a kid, I was always drawing and things like that, but wasn't particularly crazy about ceramics. I took a little bit in high school, but didn't like the medium at that time. The only reason I got into it now was because I had a series of hips and knee replacements over a 4-year period, and I was at GF Strong, and I had lots of extra time on my hands. So what I ended up doing was going to the art department there. They have sort of art therapy, but also a distraction for you just to do other things. And I started doing masks, and when I finished my rehab, then I went to the community and was looking for something. The only thing I could find that was related to masks was ceramic, and found a great little community art center with really great people, and started going there. So I've only been doing ceramics for the last probably 11 years.
And I know a little bit about music therapy. I went to a session of that at a hospital before. Could you tell us a little bit about what art therapy is?
Well, you know what, I have to plead ignorance on that because I haven't looked at it or understood, the different aspects of art therapy. I can only tell you the aspects that I got out of it from doing it, and I think there's benefit for me anyways. I think there's probably benefit in doing some sort of creative thing, whether it's music, written work, visual arts, or any other type of creative medium to express yourself. But for me, what was interesting with with this work was I was able to look at myself in the third person and not make it as personal. It was personal because the things that I show are things that happened to me, but you feel that kind of stuff. But what happens is when you're working on it, there's moments where it becomes the third person. And when it became the third person, I kind of looked back as a child and said, that kid was pretty brave. Or that, that young adult or teenager did well for the circumstances, instead of sort of beating yourself up mentally. So, for me, that was a huge surprise to get that added benefit from it. The other thing, obviously, is just being motivated to do something that's passionate, and you're getting a certain amount of exercise out of it by working the clay, and a nice distraction from the other everyday issues, along with the having chronic pain or something. It kind of you get into the zone. Next thing you know, 2 hours have gone by, and you go, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah, that you haven't even feel pain at all in that 2 hours because you're so focused.
You're focused, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess your arthritis kind of played a role in your career choice.
Oh, for work, yeah, definitely. Being diagnosed at such an early age, um, I knew that the the work role that my father had, which was, he got training back in the 30s when he was working as a blacksmith, and then later on became an arc welder and worked in sort of the blue collar industries and so forth. And my brother followed in that footstep, and most likely I would have done the same thing. But because I knew that I won't be able to lift and move and get up and get down, I knew that it was going to be some sort of desk job. So other than that, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I kind of floundered a little bit, trying different things, but I ended up finding a role as a purchaser or a buyer for electronics companies in the Lower Mainland. So I did that, worked for about probably 10 years in that field or in that area, electronics. And then my health would deteriorate, and then I'd end up in the hospital, and then I'd work, and then I'd end up, it seemed like there was a 4-year cycle. And I knew that had to stop because in the long run, it won't be good for me. But in regards to the art, the career, sort of the path that I'm taking now, it was just sort of an interesting thought, just reading about art history and different artists putting a lot of themselves into their work. An example would be Frida Kahlo and the pain that she was feeling. In fact, that she's a huge inspiration to me in that regard. And then for many years, for about 9 years, 10 years, I was volunteering in the arthritis community doing different roles. So what I did is I melded the two together and created this body of work, no pun intended.
And it's great to know that you're so passionate about, even though you're living with arthritis, you're so passionate about advocating and promoting awareness about it, and also about the art and using an interesting medium to generate the message for the general public who may not understand the disease from another standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's different organizations out there that are always sort of trying to promote awareness and so forth, but I'm trying to take it from a bit of a different angle and see if there's a response that way. I've gotten some really positive response from the artist community that I work in or play in, whatever you want to call it, and people that I know that have arthritis are sometimes moved when they see my work, or it's too hard to look at because it's quite graphic in some cases in regards to pain and so forth. But the other thing is it's sort of documenting my history, and I'm not trying to do anything more than document my experiences, and I'm not trying to say other people experience this. I always worried about that when I was doing the work originally, but then I thought I'll just do it for me, and if it resonates, it'll go someplace. But I mean, this documentation and the type of arthritis and how severe I have, it probably won't be around in the future because the care is so much better now than it was 40 years ago, when I call it the Stone Age of arthritis healthcare kind of thing. I started out with 15 aspirin a day to treat it. So I mean, the paradigm shift from that to what it is today is totally different. So
it's very good for our ACE membership to know that there's support out there and there's someone who's going through the same thing that they're experiencing, and that in essence provides inspiration and continued support for patients and caregivers to people living with arthritis. What are some tips you have for people with arthritis who are planning to pursue a career in the arts?
Well, that's a huge question, actually, but it's career. I'd say I wouldn't plan it as a career right off the bat. make sure you enjoy what you're doing. Some of the things that I've experienced going through the the art school sort of scenarios is that they want to see a broad spectrum of work. So, if you're a photographer, don't show your portfolio of all just photography. They want a more broad spectrum, that you're trying different things. But make sure you love what you're doing. And the hardest thing, I think, is, and maybe that's part of the schooling, is just finding a voice for yourself. Maybe you don't have a voice. I mean, a lot of people like to buy art that matches their couch. And, nothing wrong with that. For me, I like my art to have a little bit more of a punch or some sort of meaning behind it that resonates. So being an artist that makes money, a professional artist, it's like being an actor. They say 99% of the actors that pay their dues for acting aren't getting work on a regular basis, and then the other 1% are making scads of money.
The big billions.
Yeah, and there's artists out like that. They're like that. As a profession, I don't know, unless you go into the movie industry, computer animation and so forth, probably a good career there too, but, you have to put your effort in, and what they say, the 10,000 hours to become a master at something. So, that's a tough question, but that would be my long-winded answer.
And for you right now, I understand you have a workshop at the Port Moody Arts Center. How does the workspace there accommodate to your specific arthritis needs?
Oh, okay. I have a studio space there. I have to mention that the Port Moody Arts Center, I applied for a residency. It's a non-paying. It's basically just a free space and access to equipment. The free space is important because of the scale of the work that I'm doing. I've been living with this disease for quite a while, so I kind of know what I need in my place. So I had a friend of mine come over, and we adjusted some of the equipment. I got a higher stool to sit on, so I don't have to get up from a low sitting place, and because of that I raised the table a bit higher so that my shoulders are in a better position. And even then I noticed that I started getting neck problems towards the end, when I was really trying to get my show put together, and I was spending more hours. The back of my neck was getting sore in my arms because I'm not used to putting that much time on it. But and then of course there's people there that can help you if you need some things moved or whatever. So they're pretty accommodating.
That's really good. What is next for you in terms of arts or health advocacy, since I know those two complement each other for you?
That's a good question. I'm still trying to feel that process out. With all works of bodies of works, I usually make little drawings or studies of things, and there's a few pieces that I wasn't able to finish before the end of the show. So I wouldn't mind completing those pieces. And I've been playing around with an idea of an animation or a play, sort of a claymation type deal. And with the advent of computer technology, you can make an object look like it's talking and so forth. So I wouldn't mind developing characters around this for possibly a short film or a short animation that relates to an issue around arthritis. So I've been playing with that for the last couple of years, but I keep getting pulled away from one thing to another all the time. But I was thinking I might venture down that alley and see where it goes.
And claymation is very fun. It's actually, I think it's more interesting than anime animated characters, just because claymation you're like doing it frame by frame, and it shows that you're putting so much work into it.
Yeah, that's part of the issue. I looked into it initially, and I'm going, oh my God, that's a lot of work. But I think I might do an in-between version of that, just so the process doesn't take forever. And then you really need a dedicated space to work in. You know, looking online, some people work on their claymation stuff for years before it's finished. So I don't want to spend years doing it, but a year or two might be okay.
It sounds like an exciting project. I'm really excited to see
it could be fun.
Future of that.
Yeah, it'll be, I'd like to insert some humor into it and make it fun while hopefully at the same time somewhat thought-provoking.
Could you comment on advocating for better health and arthritis through arts? What are some of the best methods or some of the best practices you know in the art environment right now?
That's a good question, and that's one of the questions I proposed when I put this show together. Is you know, is there room or a place for art and research or art and dissemination? You know, within the healthcare community. That was sort of my one of the jumping off points for me to do this. I don't know if it's gonna, you know, make an indent or not, and that's why I'm trying it. In regards to art and research or art, there seems to be quite a buzz around it currently, in that you know, I see things online where there's a lot more interest in it, and I belong to a research group that is studying or trying to study the aspects of ethics around art and arts-based methods and research. So these are really big questions, because I'm sure there's all kinds of, you know, areas where things overlap, and people, you know, and this is where the intellectual property comes in. You know, if somebody writes a story about somebody who has cancer and they do research at the same time, well, who has ownership of it, and who gets the money for this or that? Especially if it, you know, this story becomes a TV movie or a movie in the theater or something. There's all kinds of, and these are the questions that they're trying to figure out. Those are bigger questions than I'm able to answer on my own.
Or who gets the research grants, right? Researchers have grants, but artists is more, you're supporting yourself mostly.
Well, that's it too. I mean, as you know, there's always that stigma of being the starving artist. And, you know, maybe there's a role in the future where that isn't the case anymore and people are working together. I don't know. But it's an interesting prospect to look at. And, you know, can good art come out of that too? That's the other question. But it could be a genre. There's so many different genres now, or different little slicing offs of different aspects of art that happen. So, you know, anything can happen. But I think it's an interesting thing. You know, it could potentially be more interesting than research that's done, gets, you know, taken, peer reviewed, and then gets, you know, qualified in a journal, goes out to its people or its cohort group, and then it gets stuck on a shelf someplace and may not trickle down to better practices. Will, you know, dissemination to all groups be better? You know, can art betray that? You know, maybe it's not visual arts, maybe it's music or poetry or something along those lines that people love to remember. Nobody wants to remember a dry line from a journal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something that's catchy, or maybe that's where art and research or healthcare can overlap. I don't know. But these are all questions that may or may not be asked. So
Yeah.
I could put a toe in that area and see what happens.
That's really good. And for me personally, I think it's always a stronger message when you accompany your message with a picture or a video or a short one line that really imprints a person's memory or thought processing.
Well, they've been doing it in advertising for years,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, and that's the advertising, you know, art plays a huge part in advertising. So, you know.
Why don't we end with you telling us a little bit about your particular exhibit and, you know, tell us what we should expect, what's the best from the exhibit, what, if we go, what we must see.
That's a good question. I'm very happy with the setup and the layout. It's got spotlights on the different pieces, so they really sing, so to speak, in the light. Whereas if the light's fully blasting on it from every angle, it kind of loses. And it's all set up in a certain way. I'm really quite pleased with what was put together out there, and that's, you know, the Port Moody Arts Centre and Janice Cotter, who is the coordinator out there for the galleries. So I think it's for me, I'm really quite pleased with it. Other people have told me that it's a powerful display. I tried to tell a story with each of the pieces, and the story plays out with when you first walk in. There's a guy sitting there with flames coming off of him and lava pouring out of his joints because people and myself have expressed that, you know, inflammatory arthritis is like having lava in your joints. So that's sort of the beginning process, and then I have all the other pieces lined up sort of in a story-like way based on that. My particular favorite piece is called The Fog of Fatigue, and it's a fairly big piece. It's my biggest piece. It's probably about 29 inches tall and about 21 inches in diameter, so it's quite big, and I'm trying to portray what fatigue feels like mentally and physically. As we talk about the physical aspects, but there's a lot around the mental aspects. So I kind of made it so that there's fog around the head and this kind of heaviness to the piece, and I'm quite happy with the way that one turned out. But I'm quite happy with all the pieces, frankly. But I talk about all the different aspects. If you don't like surrealism and the over-the-top aspects of that, there's what I call an arthritis still life, and I've sort of taken a page from the old Flemish painters, where they used to paint still lifes, but not of people at that period in time, but it was all about the individual's wealth. So if he was a captain of a ship, they would have a table with maps and compasses and swords, all the things that made him important in that community. So what I did is I took that and I turned it into my arthritis life, still life, and I put all the things on that table and chair that relate to the things that I need in my life to function. So it might be medication, injections, weights for exercising, dressing sticks, you know, orthotics or orthoses, proper shoes, raised chairs, you know, sock aids to pull your sock on. So I tried to portray that with that piece. So if you're not crazy about the hugely emotional aspects, that one might catch your attention. So hope you come out. Express yourself. I'm trying to do something a little bit unusual. I have a hashtag, helping hands, and I'm trying to send out little tweets on this stuff over the next 7 to 10 days on each of the different pieces with information. So hopefully you can join the conversation and tell us who your helping hands are for you.
Thank you, Otto, for the interview.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for having me.
I look forward to seeing you on May 1st, and hopefully everyone will attend. Otto is having a workshop on May 1st.
Yeah, I'm giving a talk basically on living with arthritis and sort of how I got to that place, and then I'll show you the work that I'm doing or I've done and give you a greater explanation of the work.
Great. Thank you so much, Otto. So don't forget to follow the hashtag helping hands.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.